Jackson Radio Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is an interesting story because in a time when cities' budgets are in financial free fall, you get a story like this. And this one's out of Detroit. Welcome, by the way, to the Kevin Jackson Show. 844-551-8255 if you want to get a hold of us. Detroit police officials are trying to curb overtime costs that have exploded in recent years. Although union officials insist if experienced officers keep leaving the department, those who are left will be forced to work extra hours. So the city paid $40 million in overtime pay for Detroit police officers during the 2017-18 fiscal year, 136% increase over the $16.9 million paid in 2012 and 2013, more than $10 million above the $28.3 accrued in last year's fiscal year. There are valid reasons why officers need to work overtime, but we need to better manage it, Detroit Police Chief James Craig said. This simply means we have to justify when we're deploying overtime details. Union officials say the overtime cost will increase if the city doesn't do more to retain police officers. So here's what I want to explain, because we got a movie coming out, Bleeding Blue, coming out September the 7th, and we talk about policing in America. And all these issues that we're talking about with policing in America stem from cities like Detroit. And they stem from issues related to, as you know, my favorite word to hate is leftism. The reason why we're dealing with a lack of cops, the lack of cops who want to be retained, is very simply put in the word leftism. Who would want to be a police officer in today's time? Who? They want to recruit. One of the things is, we got to recruit more black police officers. Good luck with that. When you've put a target on the back of all these police officers, do you think brothers that are now stalking and killing police officers care whether they're white, black? They don't care. Once they put on a uniform, they lose their ethnicity and they just become another target. And that's exactly what the left wanted. And so what have they created? They've created an ecosystem where the police department in Detroit has a 136% increase over a reasonable budget for overtime. And now they're spending multiple millions of dollars. $40 million in overtime. Folks, that is not a rounding error. That is significant money. That's money that could be going towards needed programs. It could be going towards medicines for the elderly, better educational opportunities for schools, trade schools, whatever. There's a lot better way to spend that money than overtime. And that overtime's been created because they have a lack of cops or lack of experienced cops. That's the cycle of leftism. We talk about what leftism costs. If we could quantize leftism's cost with respect to immigration, illegal immigration, with respect to the war on terror and how they've allowed terrorists into our midst, and maybe we'll get to this Iranian hacking scandal here in a bit, or the Awan IT brothers, or I could go on, right? But everything that these people touches your wallet and puts a dent in it, that you pull your wallet out of your pocket and go, okay, who just ripped me off? You're looking around at family members going, who did it? And your kids are going, did what, Dad? You're going, who did this? Look at this dent in my wallet. And your kids are going, we didn't touch it, Dad. I mean, seriously, our college, we're on scholarship. Haven't asked you for money for ages. Okay, well, somebody did this. I can tell you who did it. Your government. That's who's doing it. This article goes on. We have officers who are working 80-hour work weeks, and that's dangerous because they get burned out, said Mark Diaz, president of the Detroit Police Officers Association. Diaz says he's losing about 18 officers per month. Let me tell you what officers are doing. They're getting in their 20, getting their pensions. Think about it this way. You're a 20-year-old guy, 18, 20-year-old guy. You go into the police force. You retire at 40. in the prime of your life, when you really start gaining experience that you can use to help the police, you retire, you get your police pension, and then you start a new career. That's what a lot of cops do. I have a buddy, he's a former Houston cop. He retired around 45, got another job, has his cop pension, has another job now that he's doing, and he's right about to hit, I don't know, I think he's getting close to retirement in that job where he can start drawing money out. He's feasting. He loved the fact that he put his 20 in as a cop. They couldn't drag him back. Now, they could drag him back as a consultant. Now, we have the same problem in engineering. We'd have, the companies started offering packages, and the engineers who were very experienced and, knew the quirks of the business and all that said, we'll take the package. They take the package and retire, and then the company would go, oh, geez, we didn't capture that intellectual property. You want to know what that intellectual property, they call it IP, was? What was inside of that dude's head? They had no process that said, show me what it is that you do on a daily basis so we could track it. So then they started putting in these things in companies called workflow. They wanted to understand how you did things, and that can capture certain things, but it can't capture everything. But at least they got closer. And so we started relying fewer and fewer on these people to come back. One of the biggest issues that I had when I was in management consulting was, how do you keep your intellectual property from walking out the door and then having to pay to bring it back at 3 times the cost you had when it was in there? That's what you have to ask yourself. Anyway, they say the city's been hiring more officers. 23 graduated from the police academy last week, the second graduating class this year, with more new hires on the horizon. Mayor Mike Dugan's 2019 budget, approved last week by the city council, calls for an $8 million increase to the police budget of $321.7 million. Detroit spent 12.7% of its overall police budget on overtime in 2013. Chicago spent 13% of its budget on overtime last year. LA spent 7.6% of its budget on overtime. Now, here's the deal. In every one of those municipalities where that overtime budget, and we're talking about millions of dollars, folks, a $322 million police budget in Detroit is a lot of policing. So I want you to just ask yourself, what would they do if Detroit became safer? What would every one of these cities do if their cities became safer? Money back into the taxpayers' funding, things that could be done. I want you to just put a number on that. In every one of these major cities, Chicago, Baltimore, Cleveland, St. Louis, you name it, every one of them has the same issue. They're paying cops overtime. Forget the budget itself is a backbreaker. And I don't know what it is in the total budget scheme, but think about what they could save. What productivity could go back into that city if it were safer? And then you kind of get an idea of where I'm going with all of this.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.